before anything has a name. There is land. It stretches endlessly. It does not ask to be seen. It doesn't sparkle. It doesn't announce itself. It simply exists. A quiet presence, holding time like a deep breath that never leaves the chest. The wind moves over it, not fast, not loud, just there, constant, unconcerned with what century it is. The rivers carve gently through the earth, not in haste, but like a soft hand dragging across skin. And the mountains, they don't rise for effect, they're just present, still, older than memory. And in this place, long before flags and titles and fences, there are people. They are already here. They are not arriving, they are part of this rhythm. The San and the Khoikhoi. No textbooks yet, no museums, only dust, firelight, and footsteps. The San are small in stature, but strong. Lean bodies shaped by motion. They move across the land, not as owners, but as familiar guests. They follow the game. Eland, springbok, steenbok. Their eyes read the ground like it's speaking to them. A broken twig, a hoof print, a change in the air. Right now, in a place we'd now call the Karoo, a group of San are walking at sunrise. They speak very little. The morning is already full of sound, the crunch of dry grass, the hum of insects waking. The leader, maybe the eldest of the group, gestures softly. There's no need to speak. The others understand. They follow the trail. And though you or I would see only rocks and bush, they see a map, a clear living map. Later in the evening, a fire is lit, not big, just enough. Sparks fly upward like tiny stars joining the sky. The children sit near the warmth. The older ones talk quietly. An elder begins to troop. Then the story begins. The voice rises and falls, words filled with clicks and rhythm. It's not just a tale of animals and ancestors. It's a memory, performed aloud. The children don't interrupt. They know this isn't entertainment, it's inheritance. Farther west, the Khoikhoi tend to their cattle. They do not roam as far as the San. They settle for longer seasons. They move when the grass thins. Their homes, rounded huts, are taken down and rebuilt again. They are not in a hurry. Nothing here is. Their cattle are not just meat or milk. They are language, wealth, dowry, prayer. When two groups meet, they do not fight. They sit. They offer tobacco. They share words. Trade begins. Sometimes cattle, sometimes beads, sometimes stories. They speak in a tongue rich with clicks, but soft on the ear. They do not keep records on paper. They do not write down who owns what. What is shared is remembered, and what is remembered lives. For thousands of years, this continues. No kings, no borders, no cities made of stone. Just people, moving when they must, stopping when it feels right, carving tools out of bone, painting rocks with ochre, singing songs that only night understands. And the land? It does not forget them. It holds their footprints, their campsites, their echoes. And long, long before anything called South Africa is imagined, this is what the land knows. People. Walking, pausing, living, and disappearing into the morning mist. The land doesn't rush. It doesn't notice the passing centuries. It simply holds what it must. But somewhere far from this soil, people are building ships, wooden vessels heavy with goods, creaking under the weight of iron and salt and ambition. It's the 1400s. Then, the 1500s. The world begins to move faster. Maps are being drawn. Lines are being placed where none ever were. And eventually, one of those lines leads south. The Portuguese pass by first. Bartholomew Dias rounds the tip of the continent in 1488. He calls it the Cape of Storms, not because it frightens him, but because it resists him. The waters are rough, the sky growls, and he names it accordingly. Later, King John of Portugal renames it the Cape of Good Hope. Hope, not for the people already here, but for a sea route to India. You see, they're not looking at the land. They're looking through it. South Africa, to them, is not a place to know, but a path to somewhere else. Still, they don't stay. No, not yet. They come, stop, leave. The Khoikhoi see them, tall men in strange clothes, pale faces, beards like dry grass, loud voices. They trade beads, mirrors, metal for cattle. It's an awkward encounter, both sides unsure of the rules. The Khoikhoi don't quite know what to make of these strangers. The Portuguese don't speak the language of stillness. But nothing settles, not yet. The Portuguese move on. Then the Dutch arrive. Now, it's the 1600s. The Dutch East India Company, the VOC, is expanding. They don't arrive with curiosity. They arrive with a plan. In 1652, a man named Jan van Riebeek sets up a refreshment station at the Cape. Just a stopover, just to resupply ships on their way to the east. Not a colony, not at first. That comes later. But already the roots begin to stretch. They plant gardens, build a fort, and slowly they stay. For the Khoikhoi, this is no longer a visitor. This is someone building something permanent. Fences appear. Land is claimed. Animals are taken. The Khoikhoi begin to resist. There are clashes. There is tension. The balance shifts, quietly at first, then firmly. Disease plays its part. Smallpox, brought unknowingly by the newcomers. It spreads faster than spears or muskets ever could. Thousands die. Whole communities vanish. The San retreat deeper into the interior. The Khoikhoi begin to fracture. The Dutch begin bringing in slaves from Angola, Mozambique, Madagascar, even Indonesia. They build roads, they build walls, and they begin to believe that the land is theirs. But the land still remembers the people who first walked here barefoot, still echoes with their songs. And for now, the newcomers are only beginning to write their version of the story. The ink is fresh. The chapters ahead will be heavier. By the late 1600s, the Dutch are no longer passing through. They're building homes, planting vineyards, digging trenches. This refreshment station at the Cape has turned into something much more permanent. More Dutch families arrive, farmers. They're called freeburgers, meaning they're not employees of the Dutch East India Company anymore. They start spreading out beyond the small fort and gardens. They take land, fence it, grow crops, raise livestock. And the more land they take, the more they come into conflict with the Khoikhoi. This isn't a one-time event. It's a slow process. Grazing lands disappear. Access to water becomes restricted. And over time, the Khoikhoi lose not just territory, but also their way of life. Many are pushed into working for the settlers, often through force, or because they no longer have enough cattle or space to survive on their own. The Dutch also bring enslaved people to the Cape. These slaves are brought from other parts of Africa and from as far as India and Indonesia. They're put to work on farms, in households, and in the growing town. By 1700, the mix of people at the Cape is already complex. You've got Dutch settlers, German and French immigrants, local Khoikhoi and San, enslaved people from across Africa and Asia, and children born from all of these groups. A new culture starts to form. People speak a simpler version of Dutch that will eventually become Afrikaans. A group of people who don't fully belong to Europe or to any single African culture begins to emerge. Over time, they'll be called the coloured community, a term created later by colonial authorities. As the settlers move further inland, they encounter the San more often. The San, unlike the Khoikhoi, don't herd cattle. They rely on hunting and gathering. The settlers don't understand their way of life. They see them as trespassers or thieves, especially when the San hunt livestock. The violence against the San becomes brutal. Settlers organize shooting parties. The San are hunted down. They fight back when they can, but their numbers drop fast. Within a few generations, much of the San population in the Cape region is either killed, absorbed into other groups, or pushed far away. Meanwhile, the Dutch East India Company is growing stricter. They control trade, taxes, movement. Life at the Cape becomes tightly controlled. Not just for the locals and slaves, but even for the settlers. So by the mid-1700s, there's a growing tension. Farmers want more freedom. The company wants more control. The country that will one day be called South Africa is already showing signs of what it will become. A land of divisions, movement, resistance, and survival. By the late 1700s, the Dutch colony at the Cape is well established. Farms stretch far beyond the original fort. The Dutch East India Company is still in control, but it's weakening. Corruption, wars in Europe, and poor management are making it hard for the company to hold things together. Then, in 1795, something major happens in Europe. The French Revolutionary Wars are shaking up the continent. The Netherlands is invaded by France. Britain, worried about losing access to the trade route around the Cape, takes action. They send ships. Soldiers land at the Cape and take control from the Dutch. It's not a violent occupation, but it's clear. The British want to control this place. To them, the Cape is a strategic post. It's about ships, supplies, and empire. Not the land itself or the people living on it. For a short time, the Dutch get the Cape back, but by 1806 the British return. This time, they stay. The Cape Colony officially becomes part of the British Empire. Now, the rules start to change. The British bring their own systems, English law, English money, English ways of doing things. They also speak a different language, which immediately creates tension with the Dutch-speaking settlers, who are used to doing things their own way. The British begin to phase out slavery, which causes even more tension. In 1834, slavery is abolished in the British Empire. But the process is drawn out, and compensation is given to the slave owners, not the people who were enslaved. Many of the former slaves are now poor and landless, working in difficult conditions. Dutch settlers, now calling themselves Boers, are frustrated. They feel their way of life is being threatened. They don't want to be ruled by the British. They don't want to speak English. They don't agree with the new laws, especially around race and slavery. And they don't want to give up control over their land or their workers. So, in the 1830s, many of them leave. Thousands of Boer families pack up their wagons and head inland. This becomes known as the Great Trek. They're looking for independence. They want to build their own communities where they can live by their own rules. These families become known as the Four Trekkers. But the land they move into isn't empty. They come into contact with African kingdoms, strong, organized societies like the Zulu, the Ndebele, and others. And this leads to more conflict, more battles, and new layers of settlement and resistance. Meanwhile, back in the Cape Colony, the British are continuing to expand. By the mid-1800s, South Africa is no longer a quiet outpost. It's a growing colony with rising tensions, between British and Boer, between settler and African, between old ways and new systems. It's becoming clear that the land is valuable, and soon something deep underground is going to change everything.